The title of our lecture is "Why Do Kitchens Need Wheels?" And honestly, one of the reasons we've chosen this title is because we needed a catchy title for this talk and just had little time to think about it. But thinking longer about this question just seems that it really makes much sense. Around 10 years ago, we have presented our first mobile kitchen, and we didn't really expect it to be such a success. Back then, food was still not a big topic, and the people commissioned us for doing a project in Western Austria in urban space actually have cut 50% of our budget after we have presented this concept and this project. Still, we wanted to build it and perform the project in form of a happening. The concept was rooted deeply in the idea of hospitality. There comes also the title Mobile Hospitality from. And perhaps you have also a connection in Czech Republic, another connection perhaps then in Western Europe to hospitality. I mean, we are strongly inspired and still know from our childhood this extreme devoting Eastern European hospitality. When you have guests, you let them sleep in your bed, and when someone's coming in the night, you still start cooking and make a big thing about it. So we were very much interested in our heritage in this context, and we've just turned around the idea of hospitality and invited the people rooted in their city to our table, not the other way around. So we put our table in the urban space and invited them. And the urban space was temporarily occupied by us. For us, the social aspects of this project have been very important. We wanted people to take time and to show them that even in stressful city, it's possible to spontaneously stop, and that it's worth to stop and spend some time and share a dish with strangers. Sorry, go back. Since COVID, not many people would probably be happy to sit and dine squeezed in between strangers at one narrow table. But back then it worked out better than we have expected. And what was surprising for us, that so many people have a completely different understanding of this project. I mean, different people just reflected different aspects of the project. Some liked the functionality, some the aesthetics, some underlined the social aspects, others the culinary part, and some the performative aspect of the project. This was also reflected in different awards we have received for this project and in the clients that followed. One point that I liked very much was the architectural and political discourse on this project. Some architects saw the project as a critic on modern housing in cities. When life is getting too expensive, one has to transfer a part of their lives into the urban space. And others thought that it's an appeal to the society to get back to nomadism, and that this kitchen on wheels is a contemporary form of the fireplace that can be lightened always in a new place. You have also seen the context that 10 years ago, nomadism was really a fashionable word. And we had much fun and thought that it's very interesting how many discussions and reactions this project has led. A pretty funny thing, looking from today's perspective, is that I was very surprised when someone told me that this is actually like an Asian street kitchen. And it's very interesting from today's perspective or point of view, that one could say that I'm naive, but our way of thinking was completely different in this project. And this project also defined very much how we try to work in general. We wanted to bring people together to communicate with strangers, so we needed the symbolic table, and the kitchen brought the possibility that people will sit around the table, as food is always a good reason to stay. And it was important that the kitchen is mobile, foldable, and an eye-catcher, so we can travel, pop up fast, and just get people interested in the project. What I want to say is that our research and catalog of functions started really at the base, and it was never our idea from the start to design a mobile kitchen or a general kitchen. It was just a result, and it seemed a good solution for the problem we wanted to work on. But as some of you know, and what we will see also in the presentation is that we have designed many more kitchens, and most of them are mobile. You could suggest that we wanted to surf on the wave of success of the first project, or that we got a little crazy with mobility. And for the latter one, I cannot really guarantee, but in general, we have just seen that in many cases, it totally made sense for us to free kitchens from the immobility and perceive them as furniture, as mobiliar, and not as a part of the architecture, as the immobile. Perhaps it doesn't seem very important for many people, but still it is pretty interesting that we as living people don't think very much about our form and organization of living in an interior. I mean, we have, for example, living rooms that are probably in 90% of the Western society inhabited by a couch, and the whole room is organized, in most cases, around the TV. Not many people actively think about how they would like to organize their lives and how they would like to really live. If I like cooking and if I like taking long hot baths, I probably should rather have a living room with a bathtub and a kitchen in it. Also, the kitchen is something very personal. You are cooking for yourself, you're cooking to relax, you're cooking for family and friends, perhaps you cook together. But when you're moving to a new flat, to a new house, to a new city, in most cases the kitchen stays. It's a strange hybrid of architecture and furniture that is often very clean and unpersonalized, although it's the most crowded space during parties. We like this topic very much as it's also very tricky to deal with it as an object, as the form of an object, as a geometrical thing, if it's built in or standing out, or especially when it's mobile. Yes, you have the tricky parts like the connections and so on, the dirt, the possibility to clean, to work. But still, what is interesting that this topic is a topic where not many designers, architects, or people really have worked on it. Even when we look in the heritage of architectural history, yes, then when you, for example, look at the modernists, the most modernists actually wanted to get rid of the kitchen. Yes, Corbusier also thought that it's like just contemporary to get and eat in a restaurant and not to cook yourself. Also, Grete Stilichotsky, who designed the well-known Frankfurter Küche that was built, I think, around 100,000 times, actually was not a cooking person. So the kitchen was and still is reduced very much to a kind of effective idea of feeding people, and it has kind of strange, how shall I say, a strange machine-like character. And it's also a topic that not many people like to work on, like, for example, chairs. And besides the architectural fascination, the social fascination for the kitchen as an object is or can be very sensual. It is a tool to design sensual experience while preparing and later while enjoying the meal. Still, most kitchens aren't really designed in the sensual aspect. Most kitchens are just storage and a surface. And yes, you need storage and a surface in a kitchen. And that's what makes it complicated, because on the one hand, you want to have it, on the other hand, you want to get rid of it. And how do you design a kitchen that inspires someone to cook, that is not just a big, freestanding, geometrically clean, neo-modernist dream? I think it's very interesting to draw connections between the enjoyment of cooking, eating, and the social interaction that happen. How we can connect these different forms of delight to a holistic image. And now that's it, what I wanted to say to the topic of kitchen. perhaps we will dive deeper into the kitchen or in some individual project if there are questions. Like you can, as you see, we have like shown a couple of kitchens, and there are different projects that are more like objects, and then you have also social projects like with the cooking school, the community cooking space that we did with the Caritas, or do-it-yourself kitchens, or really a nomadic minimal kitchen with a fishing set. And you have kitchens that were dealing rather with the aspect of food and of haute cuisine. So I will not go really deep into each project because it would take probably too much time, but I will be happy to later answer some questions to these topics or to the materiality if you're interested in. And I think that we will now continue with Anja, who will tell you more about other projects that we are doing.
Yes, I selected we selected together some of the projects that work with topics also with mobility, but also with do-it-yourself and self-production and spatial design and acoustics. They are grouped a little bit, but here as a first one, you see the project that was created during lockdown that draws a connection to the kitchen that you saw as a last image before, and that is idea of office collection, office furniture, very ironically speaking. It came to life when we moved to the new studio that we dubbed office, meaning or as an extension, office for important stuff, our new space in Berlin. And for this space, we also created this very reduced, made of one size of planks, pretty archetypical set of furniture. You could see it as a rethinking what office furniture is and going away from exaggeration of ergonomics that we know by brands like Herman Miller, for example, and many different brands that of course create good and ergonomic furniture, but going with this ergonomics often to the very extreme. So here you see a special composition of colors and very clear lines, and also a pretty architectural approach to the set of furniture as well. And this is the only strictly project that we are showing here, but you see the approach that we often use is that we try to create space by furniture, by creating situations in the space. The second project I would like to show you is going back to Matthew, you want to say something?
One moment, I'd like to add that in this project you also see very much the approach you often see in furniture projects by us, that they are drawn very graphically, that they are very archetypical. So we try to design often furniture that are visually easy, understandable, or look as if they were easy, just to design something like a spatial graphic identity of a piece,
or a symbol of a certain idea. The second project we are showing here is not a very well-known project by us, but it's getting back to the idea of mobility, and it was created for a competition with the title Playfulness. It was quite open if it's a toy or if it's a toy for adults or toy for kids. And how we approach this topic, we wanted to bring up the joy of experimentation for kids. And we created a kit for making or building up shelters and hideaways. This project is promoting creativity for children by this, that there is no instruction. What you get, it's like this small trolley that you can drive, and it's used like as a box for another elements, and you have this wooden connectors, many sticks, ropes, and a modular textile that you can use to build whatever you like. You can also include chairs or tables. This is like creating architecture, easy architecture for children, one could say. And the fact that there is no instruction encourages you to use your imagination. The next project here shows the importance and fascination with making stuff yourself. Here we were invited as a designer in residence to the Museum MAC in Vienna, and we were confronted with the topic of do-it-yourself. We went through a proud collection of 120 books about do-it-yourself movement, and we created a project that started as a critical project of do-it-yourself because we wanted to examine the history of do-it-yourself and also the way the instructions are created, and if they work, if they are understandable for people who never built something. So how we approached it, we selected 18 iconic designs of do-it-yourself furniture from different periods, and we invited friends, students to each build one of this furniture and to observe it through interviews from different points of view. We were checking how difficult it is to build it, how difficult it is to understand the plan for them, and how they feel about also about project. Because what was very interesting finding was that most of people who are building furniture, they didn't want to keep it in the beginning. They were saying, okay, we will build this according to the instruction out of prepared materials, but you can keep it afterwards. And what we found out that there was pretty strong emotional connection to this piece of furniture just by making it with your own hands. That opened up the interesting factor of sustainability, because they wanted to keep it, the piece of furniture, in the end, and were not, in this sense, they were also not so likely to throw it away, and wanted to keep it for longer or give it to another person. That what you see on the left hand, it was a big installation in the museum where we made the scale, how difficult a project is, how difficult it was to build for our cooperators. The next project was made in the same frame of exhibition, nomadic furniture exhibition, but it's showing how thin the border between mass production and do-it-yourself is. We designed this small stool for the event that is called Long Night of Museums, and we built a production line with 5 stops. And through this do-it-yourself production line, we were able to build 200 stools in 3 hours with the visitors of the museum. So you could imagine it like this, that at each station you get another piece of wood, and you have pretty strictly shown like pretty easily shown what you should do there. And in the last station, you get a stamp on your stool. And it showed us how effective do-it-yourself may be if it's well prepared, and that actually it's quite close to, or that it may be quite close to mass production. The visitors of the museum could take the stool afterwards. So it was very nice that during this one night you could see a lot of people in Vienna walking with the stools around the city or carrying them in the underground or in the tram.
And it also shows like this connection between do-it-yourself and mass production is also a critical point, because we often forget that many technological projects, that objects that we have, like iPhones or something like this, or Google phones or whatever, are also prepared by people that just had a brief introduction and just like screw a few screws in something and have to do it like pretty fast, but I'm not like really expert. So on the one hand, it's a bit of motivation. On the other hand, it shall also request our system and how we perceive in general products also in the electrical sector.
Here a project that stays in the context of do-it-yourself, and its inspiration reaches back to 60s and 70s, where architects and designers were fascinated by modular and mobile living structures and wanted to revolutionize social canons. In this time, also negation of consumerism led to visionary concepts like ones from Ken Isaacs or Joe Colombo, like total furnishing unit. So we got inspired by project by Papanek and Hennessy that is called Living Cube, and they created in 70s many structures similar to the one that you see, but for different functions. There was a cube for listening to the music, or for playing, or for sleeping, and we were inspired by this and rethought these cubes, and were thinking if it's possible to make it more extreme and to make a project where you connect it to the cult of less movement and to minimizing your belongings, and to see how many things, how many objects, furniture you really need, especially in the times where we work digitally a lot. We don't need faxes, we actually don't need TV, and we get rid of many stuff. Some people take it even as a challenge to reduce their belongings up to 100 pieces or 200 pieces. So inspired by these movements, we created this cube, this everything cube that you can also cover up with the textile and close from outside.
And it also, what you don't see so well on the pictures, it also changes very much, or you can change it. Yes, so you fold this one board, and then you close up the kitchen. You have a writing desk. You can close the whole kitchen thing away. You can put out this little cupboard under it that is on wheels, and there you can fold out the table. When you put the whole kitchen away, you will see that there is a ladder. You can climb completely on the top of the cube and things like this. So it was just also a bit a play with modularity of space, and to see how in a minimal space what is possible, how to adapt a very small space to different functions.
And we also built it ourselves. Was a project for a gallery in this context of do-it-yourself.
What was interesting, actually, just to come back one moment, we met also Hennessy, who was doing these drawings in this publication together with Papanek, and he was very happy because he said that they have actually only done drawings and nobody of them ever has built a cube. So this was the first, he said this was the first nice cube that was built that he saw. So it was also funny that this cube was built, or like a reinterpretation of their cubes was built for probably one of the first times. I mean, there for sure other people that have built some things in private, but that he saw something like this like 40 years later.
And here I would like to introduce you to our latest project that we finished just this summer, and actually it's not completely finished because the part of the building side is still going on. This is a project that may be generally interesting for many students or many young practitioners in design. It's called Design Campus Dresden, and it's a new design platform, new research platform hosting a summer school and a museum and laboratory in the Palais in Dresden. Before it was only a museum that was in the 18th century Baroque Palais on the River Elbe and former residence of the Saxon royal court. Of course, as you imagine, the space under highly protection that you have you really have to care about the texture, the architectural tissue, and work very sensitively about it. We were asked to create a concept and also spatial concept for a summer school that will be happening every year in this palais, and it needed extreme flexibility of space, as the complete program was not very clear yet as we were starting the project. It was not super clear where the water connections will be, how many participants there will come. So our approach was creating a kind of toolbox for this school, creating pieces, furniture and spaces and the layout plans of the spaces that would allow to transform working rooms into the kitchen and terrace into the kitchen, or a place to get together, to allow the furniture to support all possible ideas of the participants of the summer school. Maybe I should add that the summer school is about design. It's very design oriented. But while creating this concept for the whole school, we came across very interesting text by Michael Fehr, a German curator, theoretician, and art historian, that it's entitled Art Museum Utopia. And he was stating in this text that the Museum of the Future, in his mind, to stay relevant, should become an exposition platform of alternative worlds. And by this, he understands the scenarios, the ideas of design and of scenarios that do not find a space in the mainstream for different reasons. It may be just that they are not commercial, or there is not enough money. It doesn't matter how many reasons, but for what reasons. But just to he states that realistic function of museum should be given away and replaced by a place of fabricating fictions. So after reading this, we thought that the most important idea for this school that will be happening there is to let these visions, let the space for these visions. So naming this space School of Utopias, we were trying to create a space that can project new visions for the future, and also by, as you see on some pictures here, one moment, sorry, the furniture itself, modular. Here you can see, for example, that the plates, they are out of aluminium and have holes, and you can build things just out of the elements of the furniture. They can be used, they can be hacked, maybe used as pixels, or you can use rope to bind things to the plates. So there was this playful approach, and seeing the whole interior as a kind of open structure that may be adapted, that may be used. Here on the right side, you see one of the like a picture where the space is already used. The first workshop took place this year, and maybe you are also interested to inform yourself deeper about this. There is each year there is a different dean of the school and another topic. This year the topic was design and democracy, and there are different creative theoreticians invited for 1 week workshops. One can register to. It's just like a side information. Here showing completely different project that was happening at the same time as the conceptual work on the design campus, illustrations that came to life very spontaneously in the first lockdown and were showing a bit ironically, but a very family design life of our reality with children, with design, with like sitting all together in restricted space, and how it all blends together. No, just one moment. Yeah, and here another project, COVID related, realized with a museum of also Staatliche Kunstsammlung Dresden, so museum in Dresden. I wanted here to make a connection that actually in this last illustration you see that we are sewing masks. It was very much like in the beginning of the pandemics, when everyone was sewing masks because there was no masks yet, and it was also not necessary to wear masks. They were just made in the beginning for hospitals. Or we created a connection to street newspaper that is called Karuna Kompass, and we were sewing masks for donating masks for homeless people, and cooperating with Karuna Kompass on this. And from this initiative, we started broader project on masks, on the history of masks in different contexts, together with a museum. Here on the right side, you see a selection of digital exhibition we were making in the Instagram account of a museum, in the times where the discussion about masks was very, very dynamic. It's maybe hard to recall it now, but at that time it was extremely emotional topic. Some people were using face shields, some thought it's not helping at all, but we approached the topic of the masks from very different angles. You see, like the first image on the top, you see, for example, the diving mask from Decathlon that was hacked by 3D pieces and transformed into ventilator that were used in the hospitals, especially in Italy, and was very, very helpful to the medical system. You see some masks that are dealing with the topic of surveillance and not allowing to recognize your face by computer systems, or masks being at the same time a medium for political protests, and of course ritual masks. So you see here this selection, and we were also in this project creating a do-it-yourself movie, how to sew a mask. Was also at the time when no one knew that these masks maybe are not the most effective ones, and we were publishing this this movie on our channels and museum channels. Afterwards, the next step was also a publication in the street newspaper that I was showing in the beginning, with many articles tackling the topic of the mask from this completely different views and sides. Would you like to say about this project, maybe?
Okay. It's also one of our earliest projects. We're still dealing also very much with architecture, with space, with sensuality. It's a project also a bit more than 10 years ago in Western Austria, in the mountains, and there was a competition about making an acoustical project. It was very much about tourism. So you can imagine what they wanted actually to have. They wanted to have like cowbells or things like this that make sound, and where children can run around and be loud and things like this. What we offered them was a kind of installation that dealt with the different aspects of silence. So we said that what we as tourists coming from the city like in this area very much is silence. But silence is not really silence. I mean, complete silence is really bad for us, but when we also psychologically, but when we're talking about a positive aspect of silence, we are very often thinking of a thing like a rush of a river, of leaves in the wind and things like this. So when you go to the mountains, you often make pictures that look like postcards and are very nice. What we wanted to make were pictures that you remember, like pictures of acoustic atmosphere, of acoustic surrounding, of these different forms of rush, of that every meter you visit of this mountain, of this area, has a different sound. And so at the end, the project got an installation, was developed an installation that is on I think 2 or 3 kilometers, has different steps and different spots where you can listen, where you can sit down, where you can meditate, and where you can feel about and just dive into the silence, into the rush. And I want to end now this presentation, but keep on talking so that you also can see me. Yes, did it work already with the ending? Yes, perfect. So with the silence and with the other projects, I just want to continue to tell you something. In the title of or in the description of our talk, we wanted also to talk about complexity and specialization. So we kind of did not talk so much about classical furniture projects and things like this. We also do, because we wanted to open up your thinking and your mind on what you can do as a designer. I mean, besides doing these projects, we are also teaching. And besides teaching, I am writing very much on the topic of kitchen, of the sensuality of cooking. I do I did last year a food critic, and I'm baking very much bread, and I'm cooking very much, and all this is for me connected very much to design, because design is it's like this, like when we look like really from the start, we as human beings in our society have like two basic needs, or like mainly besides the sexual needs we want to have a roof over our head, and we want to have a full belly. Yes, and when we start to design this roof over our head, and when we start to design what we have in our belly, or when we really start to cook, to create, then a certain form of higher culture starts, in my understanding. Yes, we have a beautiful home, we have beautiful lunch, super tasty dinner, where we start to understand the sensuality of cooking, of eating, of exchanging ourselves in a discussion while eating. So that is very interesting for me. So design in its complexity is not about, in our understanding, you can have a complete different understanding. It's not about, for us, it's not about designing a chair. It's just about understanding and creating a part of our life. And for that, we sometimes need objects. The object per se and the fetish of the object is not the important thing. The important thing is the interaction that we want to have. Yes, if it's eating, or if it's cooking, or if it's having a nice bath. But the interaction leads to the need to an object. And this we have to create then, or sometimes we think, okay, perhaps we don't even need this object and we can design something without creating an object. And very often this is the better solution in our world of consumerism. But what I wanted to, and how do I connect this to the complexity? I mean, this sounds already pretty complex, but what is interesting perhaps for students, if some students are listening, is that our work is very complex in our society, and we have to deal with very difficult, very complex, very dogmatic problems like climate change, for example. Yes, it's not that easy to solve this problem, and it's not even easy to understand all aspects of this problem, as it's very complex. Yes. Some people say, okay, plastic is in general very bad. Some people will tell you plastic is good because when we use plastic in a smart way, we can reuse it and so on and so on, and it's better than other materials. So this is just an easy thing, yes, but some people say electric cars are good. Some people will tell you, yeah, but we need much more plastic for electric cars and the batteries are a problem. Then the other people say, okay, but you can recycle the batteries and so on. You know, I will not start the topic, but it's just a very, very complex topic. I think that as a designer today, we cannot follow anymore, or you can if you want, but in my understanding or in what we are teaching is that that is difficult to follow this image of, let's say, the Italian star designer that designs the perfect chair. Today we it's good to try to think in a different way, to think of different aspects, to also think about writing, about making movies, about whatever, about dealing with completely different things than just visual things, trying to work with scientists, with engineers. I'm working with a guy from psychology. I'm working with a synthetic biologist. These are people with whom you can also work and with whom you can try to communicate your way of thinking as a designer, because making objects is when you can make objects, when you can design a chair or a kitchen or whatever, then we often have a strength that we forget very much, and that's not the strength of really reducing it to the idea of objects. It's the ability to reducing a complexity of thoughts to one object, and you can use this ability also to introduce to other people as a way of thinking, and to reduce complexity in different systems, whatever, bring people together, communicate easier things through objects, through forms, through colors, or whatever, and make things understandable to a broader mass. And that's very important. And what I want to just to end also with this topic of complexity, it's important today to really be open to work with other people from completely different fields, and to open up yourself to try to work in teams and with other people to see. I mean, for us, it's a bit too late. Yes, we're still educated in this small star designer office thing idea. We try to change, but it's difficult. But you, who still are at university, you should really think broad, and you should also think about it that the world is open for you as a designer, but perhaps think really big. And also you can go as a designer to a big company, not really designing form, thinking, and make complex situation easier, and try and help other people to deal with the complexity that our society gives us at the moment. And I think that's it from our side. And if there are questions, I'd be happy to discuss them with you.
Great, thank you so much for very inspiring thoughts on the complexity. There's plenty of questions already. Actually, I don't know which one to start with. That would be, you know,
maybe just to jump on this idea of complexity. I think that it's opening the fact that the question of the type of design you're doing. I feel that it's not just you're not just looking for function. You've talked about sensibility and delight. Do you feel that your design could belong to a form of like critical design, we could say, or like design that is more political, maybe? I don't know. This is my vision, my reading of what you said. How do you react to this?
I mean, critical design is difficult because it's a term. I mean, you probably know this term. It's from the 90s and actually found by the office Dunne and Raby. So it's a direction that is very much boxed. So I would not like to define this direction, but political is perhaps a good word. Be not to define our design. I just think that everything we expose in some kind of media, in a talk or something, can be interpreted or is in a certain form political. If you go outside into a city and you cook and invite people and invite foreigners, and you get some politicians and some homeless people in Paris at one table to discuss and dine together, sure, it's in certain form political, but everything you do can be seen political. What I think is important is that we see ourselves much more activistic in these times. Yes, I like very much activism. Unfortunately, we cannot be activists all the time, also in the context of design. I mean, we also have to earn some money, and not many people want to pay money for funny projects. But what I think is important or interesting is that we have to be aware that with each object or form or poster or decision of colors, you can be activistic in some kind of way, and you can put out questions in this world, and everything you put out in the world that is published also somewhere or that is seen on an exhibition can be political and can be seen as political. And I believe very much, I don't believe in this very naive thing that with one thing that we can deal and solve the big thing and design can change the world and so on and so on. But if every one of us changes or makes a nice project in a certain field and changes the thinking of a few people, we can have also as designers a huge influence of the society and of how the society will be.
Also, what I think is important is that to see design in very much broad contemporary context. That I think a good design is reflecting times in some kind of way. We are definitely brought up in pretty much modernistic love, and by probably mostly teachers who had this love for modernists, and it is definitely visible in our projects in formal sense. But still we try to reflect the times and reflect the complexity of our times through forms and through answers to the problems that we also see very complex. And that's why we try to not give very simple answers that were, for example, given in 90s, or like very, very bold and answers that are also in architecture so much, like houses reduced to schemes, like open house, closed house, summer house, wind house, and so on and so on. I think it's very, very catchy, but it's a question if it's enough right now.
Also the context of individuality and also of society, of diverseness. It's a big question if the answer in design is really the classical understanding of late modernist idea of product design, yes, and if the answer also in our interiors or in furniture or even in electronic objects is mass production. On the one hand, the mass production led to huge ecological problems. On the other hand, we have the possibility to individualize. And we are different people. We just perhaps do not have so much awareness of how to deal with this. But you know, we're not naive. We don't believe that someone will produce and sell our office collection like 10 million times. We are pretty aware of how we design these objects, and we know that we are working in a kind of niche, but we like to work in these niches because we can move something just by an image, you know. We can also, some people are embarrassed when they see our things. Some people think that our objects are stupid. Some people think that they are funny. Some people like them, you know. It's just a thing that is not an object that is standing in the corner and you just accept it or just like pass it by. And I think that's important, or not important. I mean, it's important for us, or our idea that we just want, if we put out things, that we want to put out things that make something with you, with the person that interacts with the object. So it was a bit long answer perhaps, but it's also a complex question: what is critical or political?
I think it's great, and so like this brings us to like, what is the proportion of more commercial project and more social project in your work? Like, how do you balance both?
I mean, it's pretty easy. When the account goes down, then you have to put out something that is easy to sell. No, I mean, luckily these projects are mixing. Yes, so I mean, the first mobile kitchen and things like this were really difficult. Yes, there were like many people that made knockoffs of these projects and things like this. Also some companies that got very inspired by these projects, and we, besides traveling like 2 years the world and cooking for strangers, we didn't have very much, let's say, financial success with these projects. But what comes with it is that these projects inspire many other people. Yes, so for example, because of these projects, we were working later with COS, we were working with Tommy Hilfiger. Fashion brands were just inspired by the aesthetics, by the function of it, for example. Yes, we had also some like this co-cooking space, this cooking school. So we had also like projects in the social sector that actually were at the end financially interesting. I think it's a difficult way, but it is possible to have a profile that is a bit more, let's say, social or active, and that you get people to also pay you for this work. Yes, I mean, also the design campus, like this interior of this castle and things like this, and rebuilding this castle, is also a project that comes out of it. You can see it on the one hand as an interior, on the other hand, you know that you are commissioned to do this because they know that you understand some social aspects that are important for this project. Yes, so I think that there is also a bigger understanding for things like this, and that the understanding is rising, that there are also more social organizations that are happy to work with designers and that are happy also to pay designers. I think that it's that compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, it's starting to get easier with these things to really work and to work with NGOs. The understanding, especially in the social sector, of the importance of design is growing.
Yeah, but we definitely, as you probably saw, we work a lot with the cultural. We work a lot with museums, and partly we also design exhibitions or curate exhibitions. So we don't have really many products that are like super selling or big. We don't have big cooperation with companies for hundreds of or thousands of pieces. It's rather also with COS or with Tommy Hilfiger, they were just like very limited numbers of more like interior like projects.
But also, like what we did commercially before COVID very much was that was also because of our mobile modular approach. We were designing quite many booths for exhibitions for companies, you know, like for design companies in Milan or the ICFF and so on. And we there a bit the approach that we tried to design very modular spaces so that the client could use the things later on, and we tried to design systems that were not looking like the standard systems at booths at fairs. Because we always see at exhibitions like these piles of gypsum plates and rubbish, you know, and you have like these 700 square meters booths that are just like piled up rubbish and probably burned later. So we try also to deal with these things. But since COVID, let's say like this, the exhibition sector went down a bit. It's starting slowly again, but we also tried to use this time to even more in, let's say, an activist or culinary part of work, and see how if we can if we can strengthen this sector in our work and even do less in the classical understanding commercial work.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's very encouraging and inspiring to see that it's possible to do both. Maybe Jitka, you might have some question too, or you from the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can give some space to the questions from the audience. This question actually goes a little back to what you've just talked about. So which of your products were put into production and are being sold? Do you manufacture and sell them yourselves? I think the second part is actually really interesting because the first we kind of went through, but do you actually manufacture and sell your products yourself, or?
Yeah, so to the first part, yes, we had we had 2 lamps that were produced in a wider range, like normally produced and sold through shops. We had a chair that is not produced anymore, and yes, we produce some things, like we have a range of glassware that we produce with a Polish glass hut, and we distribute it ourselves. We do it because the glass is pretty complicated, and when we talk to companies that wanted to do it, it would have been extremely expensive with the partner that was interested, and we were not interested to put out on the market a very expensive product. We wanted to put it out that we could afford it also ourselves. And besides that, yes, we have some objects that we produce ourselves. We do even some pieces that we produce in our workshop ourselves. But these pieces are like, yeah, this is not happening so much anymore. We also produce some lamps ourselves and some chandeliers. But it's a bit still like this. It's a difficult sector. It was very important in our work for a while. Now it's not so important anymore, and I'm also struggling in general, to be honest, with the idea of objects and putting out more objects into the world. This will probably also change again, but I have a moment of just struggling with the topic of objects.
Yes, one I think has to be quite convinced oneself that it's needed to sell it, and to be like also to see sense in creating another piece, or there has to be really strong idea to find it senseful.
But sometimes it's happening that you just think, oh my God, that's really beautiful, I have to put this out.
Yeah, I mean, we are also, even though we are very conscious about sustainability and the number of pieces in the world, we also just love aesthetic of stuff, and we are collecting, like not collecting expensive furniture, but we are just like, we like things, small, like things that are,
as many designers do.
Yeah.
Yes, we're just like have shitloads of unnecessary stuff lying around, and furniture pieces, as
like
probably
old ceramics, small, yeah, probably you see like small elephants on the shelf. It's a part of a project, yeah. Really, not bought things.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a typical clash for a designer between creating and creating too much. Actually, this way we can come back to the topic of DIY you talked about. There's a question from audience about it. It says, we live in an age of convenience. Unfortunately, what should be the main argument for DIY, which goes in the completely opposite direction? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, like as Anja said before, DIY is very interesting because of the emotional connection. On the other hand, I would say that doing an object yourself is a very satisfying act of spending your time. You know, we are very many of us work digitally also in the sector of design. It takes often ages until you see something and you're just like working in front of a screen. And when you build an object, it's so interesting that you can be so satisfied even when your object looks really shitty. Yes, you will be just satisfied that you have made it yourself and you understood how you made it. You can eventually repair it. It's just a satisfaction, and it's also a good time, a good thing to spend your time with. Yes, I mean you can go on a weekend trip with the plane to Paris and shop, but you could also build with friends something together. Yes, or cook something together.
Probably for the same budget.
So I think that is very interesting. Also, we have to ask ourselves what are interesting things, how we can spend our time, and how we can do it also socially, what we can do together, and what makes us really happy, because you know we spend very much time digitally. When you build something or you cook, you touch very many things. Yes, you smell very many things. You smell the material, you smell ingredients and so on. So it is satisfying you also sensually. And things like this will be in the future more and more important as our general life turns more and more digitally. Yes, and our senses are getting depressed because they don't get enough input. So I think the do-it-yourself culture, and I also believe that cooking has just such a big revival because of this sensual aspects that will still be more and more important in the future. And I also could believe that when we were doing the DIY exhibition in the museum, that was like also nearly 10 years ago, there was like between 2011 and 14, I would say, there was a huge hype on DIY, yes, and we had like plenty of books on do-it-yourself, with plenty of exhibitions and so on and so on. It was the topic. What was interesting that there were very interesting aspects also on the open design culture, on the open source culture, but we had big problems as designers, or not we ourselves, but other designers, how to make a living with it. Yes, there were not many systems back then. You were going on a homepage and they wanted that you transfer them $5 and you get a PDF with a plan or something. Yeah? So it was pretty obvious that this plan landed very soon somewhere else online and so on. People were not used like today to pay for Netflix or Spotify or something, yes, in a regular abonnement. We didn't have back then like paper was existing back then, but it was not so popular. So I think that that DIY have a complete different chance today if there will be a revival of the do-it-yourself culture in the context of Fab Labs, in the context of a payment system, and in the context of workshops. You know, there are like also projects like Open Desk where you order a furniture piece and locally carpenters produce it for you with the same material that is available in the whole world and things like this. And there's still the system of who gets when paid and so on. So this makes complete sense. Yeah, and I believe also that do-it-yourself can give you a certain way of individualization. And besides that, our world, by the influence of social media, of Instagram and so on, in the context of design, just gets a bit too perfect. I believe that we are completely fine with having objects that are not perfect, that are perhaps self-built and so on. And I think we will just get a bit away and a bit bored also by this perfection that is shown us in media.
Thank you. There are more questions to, I would say, a little bit more about the practical or less theoretical part of your presentation. Maybe we can. One of the question is, yes, you are using wood in the most of your designs. What kind of wood do you prefer? Is there a material you prefer? Is it wood or is it some kind of wood?
I think we work a lot with wood, and it has something to do with the previous question as well, because we started our way into design because Maciej started making prototypes of chairs, also being very impatient about architectural projects, because I think like 10, 11 years ago, we saw ourselves also much more in architecture. We were working in architecture offices, but we started with design projects this way that one could create something fast yourself. You could build it and see it in 1 week time, or sometimes in 2 days time. So the wood became quite organically the material you can easily work with, and we work a lot with just light wood that is regional, like a pine, a lot, sometimes with ash, and also we use like aesthetics of different wooden textures depending on the projects. We work with plywood, and sometimes it's more important for us aesthetically that the like leaf wood plywood is more plain, and the one from the how do you say,
from spruce
from spruce or pine is more textured. And it may be used like a texture of marble, but with the other material.
For us, also very important is that the woods we use are in general seen as pretty cheap materials, or often also used by IKEA or things like this, and by using these materials in a different aesthetical context, in a very strong geometry, and also by working with very good natural oils and things like this, we treat the material very serious. We don't say you're the cheapest material or so. Yes, we send it, we treat it with love, and at the end you can see the difference in this object. Yes, you can see how it's sanded, you can see how it's oiled, and you can see that this cheapest materials are actually or can be very, very beautiful materials, very often more beautiful if you choose the right planks, if you prepare it well, than the more expensive materials.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. There's actually another question about materials that I think is linked. In your projects, how often have you observed if people were emotionally disconnected from products where atypical materials were used? Should us product designers go with the bold decisions with the choice of materials to bring some excitement to users?
In which sense excitement? Like, so, sorry, it was like can you just repeat, because one sentence was a bit missing?
Absolutely. So should us product designers go with the bold decisions with the choice of materials to bring some excitement to users? Is it clear?
I hope I understand the question well.
Yeah. I think it's about the connection or connecting emotionally or being disconnected emotionally because of the choice of the material, if it's atypical or.
I mean, it's a difficult question. I mean, we should always be open for different materials. But I mean, materials or colors is in general a very difficult question. Yes, because there are objects that just work well with one color or with one material, although they have the same geometry and so on. So So for me, the question of materials and if we should use different materials or strange materials or something or things to accent.
Well, maybe if you have experience. Oh, sorry. Maybe if you have experience that people were disconnected because of the choice of an odd material. But we can also skip it if.
Yeah, no. It's fine. It's fine. I mean, we have used also old materials, but you don't see it very much because we send it and things like this that it's new. But we have used for several projects, for example, old woods that are just then harder. For example, visually, we didn't use old materials, and I am personally not a big fan of using old materials, like not in the when you see it. You know, I don't like to use like I know that it's recorded, but you know, like you probably know, like Pete Hanegg that is cutting like these old pieces of wood and putting it together to a plate and making this furniture out of it, out of scraps. So I'm not a fan of using this kind of accents. I like using old materials and make them and reuse them and prepare them in a new context. But I'm completely fine with what are you saying too.
I haven't had the question, but like generally we don't like making anything new that looks old and stuff like this. We are just very honestly. Okay, sorry, Maciej was just explaining me the question. Yeah, I think Maciej commented on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. We can move on. Maybe Mary, I think you also had some more questions.
Maybe just on your design process. Like I understand you like prototyping, you like drawing. What about testing, like the collaboration with the users or with the final client of your work? What space it has in your process?
I mean, testing is something I believe, or we tried sometimes to design something that was, can you hear me? Yes. We tried to design things that were made for other people, yes, or for a broader mass or something. And we thought that it's not working that well. So we in general, we're designing for ourselves. And I think that's working in our case very well. So each kitchen or things that we're doing, it's just like we're changing every 3 months our kitchens, and we are just like working on these objects, yes, and we are using all of our objects, and we are testing them mainly on ourselves, on our friends, and things like this, because I believe that it's the most honest way to design yourself, to design for yourself, and there will be some people in the world that think a bit similar like you, and then it's also for them. Yes, I think that we tested very deeply in this aspect.
Yeah, and also that's why we don't have really a commercial successful product, because like most product companies, they just they start searching for new designs, following very, very strict marketing analysis, what the broad mass needs. And we also realized this just lately, like maybe 3 years ago or maybe 4 years ago, that we will probably not have success in product design, even though we didn't know it in the beginning. We were also presenting at Satellites 2 times. We thought that our products may have a commercial success, but it's not really our strengths, and it's not really profile that we also now want to follow. But at some point we thought we will do more furniture design.
Yeah, but happily we are convinced that it doesn't make much sense for us, and that we have also other strengths, especially like in the complexity or in the understanding of different aspects with which we also like and love to work.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I think it's, and I understand what you mean, and that's great that you found your own way. Now I'm thinking about a question on, unless Jitka, if you have a question.
Yeah, another one with the most likes was something we briefly touched. I don't know if you will want to go deeper into it, but the question is about climate crisis. How should design react to ongoing climate crisis? Do you have any thoughts? It's a complex one, of course.
I think we should have a series of 3 more lectures to this topic. No, I mean, yes, it's very difficult, and actually I'm very often kind of melancholic or depressed, not knowing what to do and how to address this topic. I'm going often to talks on this topic with other people. What I think is very, very interesting. What is very interesting and sometimes also motivating, that you see people like I saw yesterday a guy, yes, who works for an ecological organization. He's a chemist in Germany, and he works for a huge ecological organization, and he said that he never thought that in his lifetime one-use plastic will be forbidden. Yes, and he said it was incredible when he read that different one-use plastics for gastronomy and so on will be forbidden, and that some things like this plastic straws in Germany are forbidden and other things. Yes, so and that it's starting to roll. So I think that that everybody can do something when he or she looks around and how they're working, where they're working. Yes, you can convince other people. You can do a product that solves some problems, yes, or that replaces some complicated and unecological production processes with local processes, and has perhaps also some social benefits and so on. Yes, there are thousands of small things I think that we can do, and very much what we can also do with design is communicate. Yes, you can also like what is a big topic is, I mean, probably all of you know that eating meat and drinking milk and cheese is very unecological, yes, and it's a huge problem. So the question for designers is also, for example, if you deal as a designer, for example, with the gastronomy or with kitchens, how you can make by design the consumption of food more ecological, yes. You have an influence, like for example, like Apple ditched the USB sticks, yes, or the CD-ROMs, and everybody was screaming, "Why did you take me this away?" And after a while, they got used because they said, "Okay, yeah, they took it away, but it's just like more beautiful or something." Yes, so we as designers have some power. It's really difficult, I have to admit. And I think if everybody of us each person of us would find one solution that we would, with this solution, like convince plenty of other people, and these will convince again other people. So I think we don't even perhaps need like thousands of solutions, but if everybody would have like one solution and the other person would have another small solution and so on and so on, we could help quite much. But what I think is very important to really, perhaps some people will set up their own offices or work in other offices. I think it's important to actively address a part of your time, perhaps it's a percentage of 10 or 20%, to actively think about these problems and just think, where is my role and can I really help something with it? Can I influence on it, and how can I have an influence on it? And you should not underestimate the social aspects, yes? Because I mean, we read also a funny article about a study about saving energy in the US. It was already quite some years old, and there was written like what convinced people to switch to LED, yes? Was it like someone who was telling them how much more ecological, energy saving, money saving, and so on and so on it is? Was it someone who was telling them how good the new light is, and so on and so on? Or was it just the neighbor who said, hey, look, I have also, and actually like 70-something% of the people were more convinced by the neighbor, as fancy as the neighbors, than by any smart ass telling them what is right or wrong. So you as a designer have also a very interesting social responsibility and opportunity to just explain things to friends and to your family, and also make this either through words or through objects.
And also we are like, in the end, each of us are creating reference to other people and maybe giving courage to other people that we are having certain decisions. We are just deciding on things that show a way to other people.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's another complex thing. I think you more or less answer the question. I mean, we're almost coming to an end, so I was thinking we could just finish with one question from the audience. That's actually about the complex ideas. So the question is, how do you deal with the translation of complex ideas and problems to the fast society? I mean, the buyers, which are superficial in decision making. I think we a little bit. I mean, we covered it a little bit, but we more talked about the individual people, that we have the power to talk to individual people. But do you think design has the power to do this more in a more broad way, in more complex? As a systematically, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And if how?
Sorry, do you hear me again? Yeah,
yes.
Okay. Yeah, because it shows me that the mic is off, so I don't know. Okay. I mean, if I knew all these answers, I would have written a book about it, probably, and it would be a bestseller. I mean, on the one hand, let's say like this, when we have individual influence on some people, we have a group together. If this group has influence on other people, we have a bigger group. And then it's a critical mass from some point that has also influenced politicians and also on the economy. Yes, I mean, I hate it very much to this thing what is always said by big companies. Yes, I was just like also visiting a week ago this huge chemical company called BASF that produces since years and has produced and still produces like very, very bad materials. And they were also saying they were like pushing also their responsibility away to the client and say, yes, the clients are demanding this, yes. And on the one hand, yes, you as a client, we as clients have the power to buy something or to not buy something, but that's the big but, because to have this critical approach to consumerism, we would also a society that is completely aware of everything. And even for us designers, it is not really easy to be aware of all problems in materials or products or not, I believe. So I would not say that the whole society is able to really critically consume. And so I believe that a certain part of society has to be like more active, shout things out, and try to get also other people from companies or from the side of politics to listen. And I mean, it sounds stupid, but the more you will repeat your things and you will tell your ideas and show your projects, or so if they're critical, 2,000 people, perhaps 2 that really start listening, and perhaps you find by incident like 2 people that really can change something. And we always, you know, what is a big problem is that we very often see like huge companies or political systems as a bad thing. But what we also have to see that in companies that really are belonging to the, let's say, bad companies like Nestle that would like to privatize water and things like this, you could say in general, without a huge problem, that Nestle is probably one of the worst companies, yes? Looking at the management with water and with other things, and then. But they are working like worldwide, probably 100,000 of people, and many of these people have children, a nice family life, and want actually that their children grow up in a good world, yes? So if you reach out to people like this also, and you change them, they have also influence on their company from the inside. And I think this is again a bit complex, yes, but I mean, we just have to communicate, we have to talk. We're very often in our, at the moment, we're very often in our social media bubbles. We are talking only to groups that anyway know the things that we're talking about, yes. Probably most of the people that are now listening have pretty similar ideas than we have, yes, and a pretty similar perception of ecological problems, but a big part of society doesn't have. So probably we have to meet more often in restaurants or in pubs and talk to each other and convince other people for other ideas and be more open to communicate and go also the hard way and not the easy way to talk only to the people that think the same as we do.
And also, I think for us personally, we're lately talking about this, maybe we are also just too polite. Maybe it's not any more time of saying, yeah, it's actually your own taste, your own opinion, it's your own way of life, because it's, I think, stopping being this your own decision, and maybe we should be more offensive about this.
You know, it's just a thing when you have a friend. I mean, at the moment we're very polite, like Anja says, but when you have a friend and that is, for example, every weekend flying with the plane shopping, yes, you would say that, okay, I even don't care about the shopping, but flying every weekend somewhere is like really a thing that a person our age, also with our education, should probably not do, and this person should be aware of the huge negative ecological impact has. So the question is, and I don't know the answer, but the question is, should we be so tolerant to say, okay, it's your decision and just talk them and sit at the table, or just say, hey, I really like you, but it's really bullshit what you're doing, and think about it. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's not my suggestion that I believe this. I don't know, but perhaps, but I believe that if you have good friends, you can probably do it like this. And I think that at the moment we're a bit too in our society, we try to be very much in our, also socially, in a huge comfort zone.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for quite inspirational and hopeful, a little radical answer to completely. No, I don't think it's radical. It's more just like, you know, it evolved. But so, yeah, I think this is a very difficult, complex topic for maybe another lecture, maybe sometime in the future. Today, unfortunately, we're running out of time. You also have your personal lives, so we will not keep you here any longer. But thank you so much for a great lecture and very fruitful and interesting discussion. I hope it was interesting for you too. And I will probably just end this slowly, say goodbye, and I won't, this time I will not invite the audience to a next lecture because there won't be any this semester anymore. Hopefully next semester we can see each other again. And Matti and Anja, I hope that we get to see each other maybe personally next time, maybe in Prague. Maybe we can have another lecture on a further topic.
Or in Berlin, who knows?
Or in Berlin, yes. Exactly.
Yes. Maybe just we can invite the participants just to watch the lectures when they will be published, and also we will also publish some report about this conference or series of lectures. So we will stay in touch with everybody. Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting us. And
yeah, thank you.
Jens had also some fun.
Yes, thank you. Have a nice evening. And to everybody who's still here with us, good night. Thank you for being here. Hope it was interesting for you all, and good night.